Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. After years of investigations, a lawyer for former President Donald Trump says the Manhattan District Attorney has no plans to bring charges against Trump. However, he says there are some charges planned against the Trump Organization and executives. Officials identify victims who lost their lives in the collapse of the Surfside condo building as an investigation is underway. Venezuelans cross into the U.S. illegally in droves. Record numbers apprehended. An expert gives us her take on why they're coming. A new variant of the CCP virus is spreading in California. How severe is it, and how will it impact the state after reopening a few weeks ago? And Arizona is following Florida's lead in reforming civics education. State lawmakers now require schools to teach the stories of people who fled communism. After years of investigations, a lawyer for Donald Trump says the Manhattan District Attorney won't be bringing charges against the former president. Trump attorney Ronald Fischetti says he spoke with Manhattan DA Cy Vance's team last week about the charges they were considering. Vance has been investigating the Trump Organization and Trump's finances for years. But according to Fischetti, the DA currently has no plans to charge Trump himself. Speaking to Politico Monday, Fischetti said members of Vance's team told him that only charges against the Trump Organization and its individual employees were being considered. The charges are related to alleged failures to pay taxes on corporate benefits and perks. According to Fischetti, the team also told him that they have no charges related to allegations of hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. The Trump lawyer called the amount of charges crazy, saying to Politico that the charges are so small that he can't believe he's going to have to try a case like this. And today, President Biden met with Israel's president at the White House, where he doubled down on his support for Israel and said that he would not tolerate a nuclear-capable Iran. NTD's Steve Lance has more from the Capitol.
Today, President Joe Biden welcomed outgoing Israeli President Reuven Rivlin. The meeting was seen as more of a symbolic gesture to show the strong bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Israel. Israel is a parliamentary government, so the role of president is seen as more of a ceremonial role, whereas the real power in the country is yielded to the government via the prime minister. Now, one thing that makes this interesting is the recent abrupt transition of power that just took place in Israel, with former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu being unseated by political rival Naftali Bennett. President Biden reaffirmed the United States' commitment and friendship to Israel, and the long-standing allies met for a brief time in the Oval Office. The meeting also came on the heels of U.S.-led airstrikes over the weekend in Iraq against Iranian-backed militia groups. In the Israeli president's final trip as president, he visited New York City yesterday, where he met with the city's Jewish leaders, before coming here to Washington, D.C., where he met with President Biden. Steve Lance, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
At least 10 people are confirmed dead in the tragic collapse of a residential building near Miami, Florida. That's while over 150 people are still missing. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more from survivors and the town commissioner.
Officials have identified 8 out of 10 individuals who lost their lives in the collapse of Champlain Towers South early Thursday morning in Surfside, Florida, which is just northeast of Miami. Another 151 people are still unaccounted for as crews dig a trench through the middle of the rubble. That's so they can search for survivors in other parts of the wreckage and put out a deep fire that was impeding the rescue effort. A survivor recounts the experience of racing against the clock, trying to go down the staircase as the walls started coming down.
When we got down to about the 3rd floor, there was an elderly woman. She needed help. So my son and I helped her get down to the 1st floor. And when we got down there, we realized that the 1st floor had collapsed a little bit, about 3 feet, and we had to kind of crawl our way up existing rubble. Do it with an elderly woman as well, able to pull that off and then get to the pool deck.
A structural engineering report in 2018 found widespread problems with the building, and it said extensive repairs were needed at the time. Surfside's town commissioner said to his knowledge, the report was in the context of improving the building, not of structural failure.
But from what I've seen, and I haven't had that much time to comb through everything, it's just tragic because you don't see any ill intent or anybody blindly neglecting a warning to exit that building, because it just wasn't there based on my understanding of what was communicated. And that's why it was such a shock to me and to everyone.
Workers continue in 12-hour shifts to comb through the rubble and keep their ears out for signs of life, and the governor says the search will continue until there is a resolution.
We're also working in conjunction with FEMA, as well as in conjunction with both local government and private organizations to bring relief services to the family members, and that involves relocation assistance. It involves things like mental health counseling.
An investigation into the collapse is underway by the same agency that probed the World Trade Center collapse on 9/11. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Part of the surge down at the U.S.-Mexico border are Venezuelans, some of whom are fleeing the socialist dictatorship. A record number of them have already been arrested at the border. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on the surge.
Escaping Venezuela, says this man running to the Rio Grande, preparing to illegally cross into the U.S. A record number of Venezuelans have already done it this year, over 17,000. Among them are people who say they're running away from Venezuela's socialist dictator, Nicolás Maduro.
I think Americans are sympathetic to what has happened in Venezuela, but the reality is that many Venezuelans have already found safe haven in other countries in the region.
Jessica Vaughn is the director of policy studies at Center for Immigration Studies, a Washington, D.C.-based research institute. They describe themselves as being pro-immigrant but supporters of low immigration. According to AP, many of these Venezuelans crossing the border illegally this year have lived in other South American countries for years. In Vaughn's view, this isn't so much about the Maduro regime. This is about the Biden administration's lenient border policies.
There's a name for it in countries south of our border. They call it La Invitación from Biden, and that means if they can make it to the United States, they are not going to be made to leave. They're going to be allowed to enter. The other reason this is such a problem is because this illegal migration is run by criminal smuggling organizations. And the more money they make off of human smuggling, the worse it is for civil society in the countries in which they operate. And that is one of the root causes for the problems that are causing people to flee.
Vaughn says Harris has done nothing to curb illegal immigration. Rather, the administration's border policies have only made it worse. The VP did say earlier this month that the administration will form a task force to crack down on human smuggling. But from the beginning, they've removed Trump-era policies credited with stemming the flow. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Cases of the CCP virus Delta variant are rising in California. So far, it appears to be more transmissible. NTD's Brandon Dre has more on what public health officials are saying.
Several countries around the world, including Australia and Israel, have already implemented new lockdown measures due to the Delta variant of COVID-19. Now, California public health officials are monitoring the variant in close detail. Coronavirus cases are increasing in California from the Delta variant of the CCP virus, also known as COVID-19, that was first detected in India. The California Department of Public Health is reporting a 10% increase from last month after officials analyzed this variant of concern. Los Angeles County recently confirmed 123 new cases emerged and are warning residents of a possible outbreak.
We're especially concerned about this variant because it appears to be highly transmissible. That is, it is more contagious than even the other highly contagious COVID variants.
Dr. Ferrer also notes this variant may cause more severe infections than other variants after a recent Scottish study was published. The World Health Organization is cautioning both vaccinated and unvaccinated people to continue practicing social distancing measures and mask wearing as the Delta variant becomes increasingly dominant in the United States. But other professionals are not as supportive. Dr. Vin Gupta of the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation tweeted last week, and the message from the World Health Organization is confusing. He wrote, "We have data that being fully vaccinated protects against severe outcomes from the Delta variant, and new data contradicting this claim has not emerged."
While these numbers are very small, and it would be very early to make conclusions about the danger the Delta variant poses, the data does support the protection that's offered by the vaccine. And it suggests that those fully vaccinated who became infected experienced relatively mild illness.
Now, as of right now, no deaths have been reported in Los Angeles County, and we have yet to see any widespread scientific consensus that this new variant will be more severe than the original strain. But new data is showing that the Delta variant is now the third most common in California. Brandon Dre, NTD News, Los Angeles.
A group of Senate Republicans is urging the CDC to end its mask mandate for public transportation.
6 Republican senators introduced a resolution calling on the CDC to stop requiring fully vaccinated Americans to wear masks on airplanes, trains, and buses. Since late January this year, the CDC has required everyone to wear face masks on public transportation. But other restrictions have been lifted in different areas, including dining. Senator Susan Collins says it makes no sense that someone can go to a restaurant without wearing a mask, but they cannot fly on an airplane without one, even though planes have better ventilation. Senator Ted Cruz said Americans should be able to travel to celebrate Independence Day with their friends and loved ones without having to follow an outdated and unnecessary mandate. It comes just days after Democrats blocked another bill seeking to lift mask mandates on public transportation. When blocking that bill, Senator Patty Murray said the virus is still spreading and that we cannot pretend this pandemic is over. The number of CCP virus cases and deaths in the U.S. is now similar to those seen in late March 2020, after the pandemic first hit the U.S. The Transportation Security Administration's masking order currently runs through mid-September.
2 of the available COVID vaccines use mRNA technology. The inventor of this technology is now raising questions about the safety of these vaccines, and he's already being censored for it. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
The FDA allowed pharmaceutical companies to cut corners when they gave the COVID vaccines a pass for emergency use. They're still being tested.
I mean, you can do the math. We haven't had 2 years of safety data after 3,000 subjects have been voluntarily administered the vaccine.
Dr. Robert Malone invented mRNA technology. He says researchers have discovered that the CCP virus's spike protein is cytotoxic, meaning it damages cells and can also open blood-brain barriers. All emergency use vaccines in the U.S. use this spike. Dr. Malone tells The Nation Speaks that he believes ethical and legal lines have been crossed in how these experimental vaccines are being advertised or mandated.
Everyone that accepts the product has to do so fully voluntarily. They cannot be coerced in any way. That includes pressure through social media, through public statements from political leaders. There has to be voluntary, non-coerced consent to take the product for the good of humanity.
At the moment, a nurse is suing the Texas Methodist Hospital for this reason. She's been fired along with others for refusing to get vaccinated against COVID. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
The Supreme Court today refused to take up a transgender bathroom case. In doing so, the court allowed a lower court decision to stand, which ruled that transgender students can use bathrooms that correspond to their gender identity.
The Supreme Court declined to hear the case, leaving in place a lower court's ruling that the Gloucester County School Board had acted unlawfully in barring Gavin Grimm from using the boys' bathroom. Grimm was born female and identifies as male. Gloucester High School first allowed him to use the boys' bathroom. Following complaints from parents, the school gave him the option of using a private bathroom, but Grimm refused and sued the school board in 2015. The case was set to be argued at the Supreme Court in 2017, but was dropped when the Trump administration reversed Obama-era guidance regarding bathroom access for transgender students. The court order shows that Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito would have taken the case. The Fourth Circuit ruling does not set a national legal precedent, but it does apply to the 5 states within its jurisdiction: Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. Earlier this year, the Virginia Department of Education provided model policies for school boards, allowing students to use restrooms and pronouns they identify with. Lin Lin, NTD News.
A new survey found that the United States ranks last in media trust out of 46 nations. It also found that many Americans are turning away from news or avoiding altogether following the 2020 election. Here are the details.
The annual digital news report from the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism found that trust in media increased overall across the world, but not in the United States. According to the report, the U.S. ranks last in media trust at 29%, among 92,000 news consumers surveyed in 46 countries. The country with the highest levels of overall trust is Finland at 65%. Americans' interest in the news is also declining. The report said interest in news has fallen sharply in the United States following the election of President Biden, especially with right-leaning groups. The report found that overall Americans' interest in the news has dropped by about 11 percentage points, down to 55%. Poynter, a left-leaning journalism school, theorized the lack of trust is caused, at least in part, by the extreme political polarization in the U.S. But some media critics pointed to the lack of introspection on behalf of corporate-owned media outlets. Longtime journalist and legacy media critic Glenn Greenwald said in a tweet that the findings aren't surprising. He wrote, "Most amazing is that the corporate sector of the U.S. media is failing in every respect, financially, culturally, collapsing trust. Any other industry failing like this would engage in self-critique, asking why. They never do." Another longtime reporter, Mike Glenn of the Washington Times, wrote, "There was some media introspection for a few moments after Trump's election, but that quickly disappeared. Last month's Nielsen ratings show CNN's viewership down nearly 70% since January. MSNBC lost the second most viewers, down by 49%.
Lead Republican Senator Mitch McConnell is asking for Democrats to follow President Biden's lead, calling on Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to de-link the bipartisan infrastructure plan from the human infrastructure plan. But many Democrats, including Pelosi and far-left progressives, refuse to pass the bipartisan package without a 100% guarantee on their social welfare agenda. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details from Capitol Hill.
The bipartisan infrastructure plan doesn't seem to be so bipartisan after all. There's a divide on Capitol Hill as to whether this bipartisan plan should be directly linked to a human infrastructure plan. Republicans are saying they'll withhold votes if the two are linked together, while Democrats are saying they'll withhold votes if they're not.
We will not take up a bill in the House until the Senate passes the bipartisan bill and a reconciliation bill.
President Biden originally had a similar message, saying he would not sign the bipartisan package without his family's plan coming in tandem. He immediately faced backlash from Republicans.
Less than 2 hours after publicly commending our colleagues and actually endorsing the bipartisan agreement, the president took the extraordinary step of threatening to veto it.
Biden has backpedaled on this ultimatum, saying it was not his intent to put the bipartisan deal in jeopardy. Now Senator Mitch McConnell wants Pelosi and Schumer to follow Biden's lead. McConnell says without Schumer and Pelosi de-linking the bills, Biden's walkback is hollow. Republicans now saying they refuse to vote for the bipartisan deal if a reconciliation deal is passed with it. Senator Lindsey Graham wrote in a tweet, "No deal by extortion." But some progressives are staying tough. Senator Bernie Sanders wrote in a tweet, "No reconciliation bill, no deal. We need transformative change now." Sanders is pushing for a $6 trillion package that would include a variety of social welfare funding, such as Medicare expansion, affordable housing, childcare, etc.
If we pass what I would like to see us pass, it is probably the most consequential piece of legislation for working families passed since the 1930s and the Great Depression.
So really all of these factors put this bipartisan infrastructure deal at risk. Whether human infrastructure is linked to the deal or not, both sides of the aisle risk losing votes. So we'll have to see how congressional leadership plans to bring Congress together and really get something on infrastructure passed. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And while on the national stage, most eyes are on the federal infrastructure bill, the tri-state area in the Northeast is set to expand its infrastructure. NTD's Arian Pazdar has that story.
More than 300,000 people travel to New York City from New Jersey every single day. On Monday, U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg and New York Senator Chuck Schumer were among those arriving here at Penn Station. They discussed the Gateway Project, a multi-billion-dollar plan aiming to make the commute between New York and New Jersey a little smoother. Schumer said construction could start as soon as next year. The Gateway Project is a series of rail projects between New Jersey and New York City, covering the most congested 10-mile section of the Northeast Corridor. Buttigieg says the rail tunnels under the Hudson River are especially important.
If one of these tunnels were to go out of service, you would be feeling the economic impact all the way back in Indiana, where I come from.
Amtrak says twice as many trains will be able to cross the Hudson every hour with the 2 new Gateway tunnels. Schumer says capacity isn't the only problem. Salt water entered the tunnels after Hurricane Sandy, which caused corrosion.
This is an example of the corroded wiring that is part of Gateway.
The Gateway Project was first introduced in 2011, and parts of it had already started back then. Schumer accuses former President Trump of holding the project hostage during his presidency by withholding funding. Trump had said that the 2 states didn't contribute enough to the project. Senator Schumer says different parts of the Gateway Project will be completed at different times, but he thinks all should be done within the next 6 or 7 years. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
As New York City continues to open up, so does crime. Another gunman opens fire in Times Square, this time hitting a United States Marine. And Shen Yun Performing Arts kicked off its 2021 tour in Stamford, Connecticut. Audience members of the sold-out shows say the performance brought them hope and inspiration. Find out more here on NTD News. Yesterday, around 5 p.m., an unidentified male opened fire in Times Square, allegedly missed his target and hit a U.S. Marine in the back. The shooter fled the scene and is still at large. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
A man pulled out a gun in broad daylight and fired at another man. The alleged shooter is seen here fleeing the scene. According to reports, the shooting ensued during an argument between 2 street vendors. The bullet missed and hit a tourist in the back. The shooting victim was later identified as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. This comes a month after another man opened fire at Times Square and shot 2 women and a 4-year-old girl. We spoke to some people at Times Square to see if they feel safe.
I just feel it's the same as it was 15 years ago. More cops are around though, more security. So that's a good thing.
Yes, with the police here, we are always safe.
You know, the center, as far as I know, the center like Manhattan to me seems safe.
Republican nominee for New York City mayor and founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa, went to Times Square and commented on Sunday's shooting. He believes the spike in crime in New York City is a direct result of defunding the police. The NYPD budget was cut by $1 billion, which eliminated the undercover street crime unit.
They used to prowl this area of Times Square in vehicles, Federal Express vehicles, yellow cabs. They were not identifiable as 5-0. They didn't ride around in police cars as they do now. Imagine this. They have them in an undercover police car in uniform. Anybody in their right mind who's up to committing crime can spot a uniformed police officer a mile away.
Sliwa said because certain crimes are not prosecuted harshly, it emboldens criminals to carry weapons that they would not normally carry if the punishment was greater.
And as the city is recovering, resurrecting itself, this is the gateway to the world. This is the most recognizable area of New York City. If there continues to be reports of violent crime, of shootings, of stabbings, of fights, who's going to want to come here?
The tourist was hit by a stray bullet right outside of this Marriott hotel at Times Square on 45th Street and 7th Avenue. He is expected to survive. Curtis Sliwa believes if he is elected, he can prevent these kinds of things from happening by increasing police presence. Jason Perry, NTD News, New York.
Johnson & Johnson has agreed to pay $230 million to New York State. It's to settle claims that the pharmaceutical giant helped fuel the opioid crisis. New York's Attorney General made the announcement, adding that the drug maker also agreed to stop making and distributing opioids in the United States. In 2019, she filed a lawsuit against a number of drug manufacturers and distributors, claiming they're responsible for fueling the opioid epidemic. With this settlement, Johnson & Johnson will avoid a trial set to begin on Long Island this week. The company says the settlement doesn't mean it admits any liability or wrongdoing. It also says its marketing and promotion of prescription painkillers were appropriate and responsible. And a long line wrapped around a theater in Stamford, Connecticut over the weekend. That's as eager audience members waited for the doors to open to see Shen Yun Performing Arts. There, many people expressed hope after a year of lockdown. Check it out.
As the U.S. slowly recovers from the pandemic, Shen Yun starts its 2021 tour with 3 sold-out performances this weekend at Stamford, Connecticut's Palace Theater.
Wonderful. Yeah, very beautiful. I love that it's done in vignettes and tells the story. It brings a lot. You know, we didn't know anything about it coming to see it, and it sets it up and then shows us the story. It's in nice, it's very well done.
Audience members say it's an uplifting and educational experience.
Oh, I've been smiling the entire time. Just the colors, the flow, the story, all of it.
I think the singer was amazing. The singer was very, very good. The storyline, how it's explained. For somebody like us that never experienced something like this is very, very important, the way they were explaining it.
I think several of the stories that went through what I'll say is the intervention of a deity into the day-to-day just gives a lot of us hope.
Shen Yun Performing Arts' mission is to revive 5,000 years of Chinese culture, a divinely inspired culture from before communism took over.
It's a very divine culture, and it's a very old and ancient culture, and it should not be forgotten. It basically creates awareness with Shen Yun that ancient Chinese culture should come back, and it should challenge the communist regime as well, and maybe someday it will prevail over communism in China.
I think also understanding what I'll say is the origins of your culture had just helped to bring people together. You need to have more shows because the West needs to hear the origins of China, not what we just see in movies today.
The performance is returning by popular demand with 3 more shows at the Palace Theater in July.
Coming up next, California's Antioch City is planning to build a cannabis facility. The mayor has high hopes of making his city the cannabis capital. And people may soon be able to buzz through traffic jams in an air taxi. The founder of this company says his aircraft could reduce commute time by an hour. Stay tuned for more on NTD News.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Navigating a world of economic madness, you need to have the right guide.
What do today's decisions mean for your tomorrow? We ask why. What's the alternative? Uncover the deeper reasons and the hidden influences, and highlight the real opportunities for profit. At NTD Business, we connect the dots for you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
California's Antioch is one step closer to building what could be the largest cannabis facilities in the U.S. The city mayor calls it the cannabis capital of Northern California. Here's NTD's Cynthia Kai with the story.
California's Antioch City is now one step closer to turning an old Kmart store into an indoor cannabis facility. The 95,000 square foot building will include its own cannabis cultivation area and dispensary. The City Council approved Radix Growth's use permit variance and design review application for a cannabis facility. In an interview with KPIX, Antioch Mayor Lamar Thrope says he is proud to make Antioch the cannabis capital of Northern California. He adds that cannabis sales revenue helped the city during the pandemic.
We owe a debt to the cannabis industry for saving people's jobs, making sure economic growth continued throughout our city.
During the online Tuesday City Council meeting, no audience members spoke in support or opposition of the cannabis project. City Council members agreed to move forward with the project in a 5-0 vote.
We're not interested in that. What we're interested in is in operators who are going to be here for the long haul. And so I've become quite frustrated with some of the operators people who claim that they're operators come through our process and haven't opened their doors.
While cannabis is still illegal at the federal level, California's Proposition 64 legalized the private use of marijuana at the state level. Antioch is also reportedly ranked 20th among all Californian cities in terms of violent crime rates. If built, the facility could become the largest cannabis facility in the U.S. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
And in California, several organizations held a conference to discuss the dangers of hallucinogenic drugs. They spoke against a bill that would decriminalize these drugs. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more.
Several representatives held an online conference to speak up against Senate Bill 519. The bill, introduced by Senator Scott Wiener in February, plans to legalize certain hallucinogens, such as LSD. They say legalizing such drugs will increase the risk of violence in the community.
Unfortunately, a bill like this does not consider what this will do for children in these positions, especially when we talk about hallucinogenics. These are drugs that alter the state of mind and coherence of the individual using them. So a child sitting at home with a parent who is hallucinating or going into temporary psychosis could be very, very dangerous for that child.
Illegal drugs are illegal for a reason. They are dangerous and they're addictive. Some of them are so strong and addictive that people overdose and die. Others cause panic attacks, kidney failure, paranoia, vomiting, hallucinations, psychosis, heart damage, brain damage, suicidal thoughts, violence, and even death. And it's our peace officers, our firefighters, our EMS system, our hospitals that are the ones dealing with these poor folks that are addicted to these drugs.
One spoke to a family member who was slipped LSD when she was 18. He said she wound up getting hospitalized and still suffers flashbacks after over 60 years.
And about a week ago, I decided, well, I'll follow up. And so I gave her a call. And I said, remember you told me a number of years ago that you used to get flashbacks from the time you were slipped LSD? She said, yes. And I said, well, when did the flashbacks stop? And there was a little pause on the phone. And she said, John, they've never stopped. I still get them. Now she's going to be 74 in about a month.
They still have ketamine in there. Maybe they're going to change it. But the fact that they even put it there in the first place, doesn't that say a lot? We have a drug that is used to facilitate sexual assault in this country. And in this country, every 68 seconds, somebody is sexually assaulted. Now, for sure, they're not all sexually assaulted by a date rape drug. But one only needs to meet a victim of a date rape drug crime to understand the devastating impact. I know it because I've met those folks prosecuting those types of cases.
Last Friday, Californians rallied in San Francisco and Los Angeles to speak out against the bill. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
California lawmakers are planning to change its recall and election laws again. Some California legislators are trying to pass a bill that may be favorable to the governor surviving the coming recall election. Here's NTD's Cynthia Kai with more.
California is seeking to change its recall rules and regulations ahead of Governor Gavin Newsom's recall. California's state legislature introduced Assembly Bill 152 back in February. On Monday, June 28th, the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee held a hearing for the bill. Committee members voted 12 in support and 4 against.
This bill clarifies how the 2021 gubernatorial recall election will be conducted and appropriates $35 million to the general fund to the Secretary of State to support statewide and local costs related to administering the election.
Assembly Bill 152 essentially speeds up the recall election process. The bill will allow lawmakers to bypass the legislative review process as long as they have secured money in the county to pay for the elections. However, some California legislators have expressed concern regarding this bill.
Are there going to be assurances to the public, or what kind of assurances are we going to be able to give the public that no contracts will go to firms with political campaign ties, like we experienced in the previous few months, where I guess Team Biden's organization got a substantial amount of money for voter outreach. I know there were lawsuits filed.
State Assembly member Kevin Kiley said on Twitter, Gavin Newsom and his enablers are changing the rules of the recall in the middle of the game. They cheat in plain sight and wonder why people lack trust in our elections. This is the second time California legislators have tried to change election rules. In 2018, California's elected officials also changed election laws during Senator Josh Newman's recall. Now, Assembly Bill 152 is headed back to the Senate floor for a vote, and a date for the upcoming special election is still being decided. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
Firefighters remind people to be safe as 4th of July comes up. This is especially so in California, where setting off illegal fireworks may lead to fire hazards. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more.
The East Bay Hills behind me is a high fire hazard area. With 4th of July around the corner, California residents are reminded to not use illegal fireworks as it faces another high fire season.
Well, with 4th of July coming up, it's a national holiday. Everybody loves to celebrate and have a good time, but we need to celebrate and have a good time responsibly. We need to make sure that we're not using fireworks or being around fireworks, and make sure we report all the fireworks that we do see.
The Oakland Fire Department reminds people that fireworks can be dangerous. Fireworks can potentially harm people nearby, burn down houses, or start a wildfire.
I understand it's exciting. We don't have a lot of professional fireworks going on this year, but please leave it to the professionals. It's extremely dangerous, and we don't want anybody to get hurt.
In California, fireworks are under strict guidelines and are generally illegal throughout the state. Recently, San Mateo County Sheriff's investigators identified and arrested Sam San and Jennifer Nguyen for selling illegal fireworks. Investigators seized approximately 15,000 pounds of fireworks and $1 million in cash. California's firefighters and parks management agencies continue to prepare for the upcoming holiday weekend. They urge everyone to be safe and mindful as we celebrate July 4th. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
In the near future, people may be able to shorten their commute time by flying over traffic. A new all-electric helicopter is the brainchild of a Santa Cruz-based company. NTD's David Lamb has the story.
Joby Aviation has created an all-electric aircraft capable of reaching a top speed of 200 miles per hour. The company says that its helicopter, which can travel 150 miles on one charge, can transport one pilot and 4 passengers. Founded in 2009, its goal is to reduce urban congestion and move towards sustainability. They claim it's a zero-emissions copter and very quiet.
At 55 decibels, this is more than 1,000 times quieter than a helicopter taking off at 90 decibels.
So with a distance of 150 miles, where can you go? We asked travelers what they think about the idea, and they all love it. One traveler said he doesn't mind taking it for a weekend getaway with his friends.
So I would go down to Monterey, maybe Tahoe. I don't know what the distance is off the top of my head, but maybe Tahoe if that's close enough.
A full trip can cost the same as a taxi ride.
I thought it was pretty fascinating with all this new technology. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but it's really fascinating.
I think it would improve our technology around the world, and yeah, I would actually prefer using it because plane flights, they can be hard sometimes, like just hearing all the crying babies around here and just all the loudness in there, and it would be pretty peaceful in there.
The company has completed over 1,000 test flights and hopes to make progress on a large facility this year.
Joby Aviation has previously partnered with NASA and Toyota, and they plan to get their aircraft certified in 2023 and publicly available by 2024. David Lam, NTD News, California.
Coming up, Hong Kong police arrest yet another journalist from pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily. Authorities requested that the company hand over employees' personal info in exchange for unfreezing its assets. And a tragic fire in China. 18 children at a martial arts school lost their lives, with 16 more injured. Stay tuned for more here on NTD News. Hong Kong authorities arrested a senior journalist at the airport on Sunday. The man worked for the now closed pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily. He was trying to leave the city for the UK.
According to South China Morning Post, the Hong Kong police said that they arrested the man for conspiring to collude with foreign countries or foreign forces to endanger national security. The police typically do not identify the individual, but South China Morning Post reported that the man is 57-year-old Fang Wai-kong. Hong Kong pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily printed its final copy last Thursday and was forced to close. Earlier this month, authorities froze $2.3 million worth of company assets and detained the paper's top executives, including the editor-in-chief. The Morning Post reported that Hong Kong's Security Bureau requested that Apple Daily hand over a list of employees and other sensitive information, noting that city authorities will only release its assets once the company agrees. The publication needs those funds in order to pay outstanding wages to its employees. Some staff members opposed the idea, saying that authorities may retaliate against them. If confirmed, Fun is the 7th person at the paper arrested in 2 weeks. The 7 of them were either journalists or executives. They were all arrested under the national security law imposed by Beijing. The crackdown on Apple Daily seems to follow an instruction in March by the director of China's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. He said that the Chinese regime's principle of patriots governing Hong Kong should be extended from public officials to the judiciary, the education sector, and the media. Beijing's so-called patriots refer to people that support the communist regime.
18 children tragically lost their lives in a midnight fire in China. Locked in their dorm rooms, they weren't able to escape. Local authorities are now working to block information about the accident from spreading online.
At least 18 students are dead and 16 more injured following a fire inside a martial arts school in central China. Flames ignited inside Zhengxing International Fight Club Training Center Friday night, located in Changzhou City inside Henan Province. According to Chinese media outlet Xinhua Net, over 30 people were rescued. The victims range between 7 and 16 years old. The doors leading to their dorm rooms were reported locked at night when the fire broke out.
Fire broke out at around 2. Police were called at around 3. There was not even one adult. Why did they lock the door? Isn't it murder? My son told me kids often feel hungry due to their many physical activities. The school was afraid that the kids would go grab food by themselves at night, so they locked the doors.
Though the martial arts school was registered with the state, the building was reportedly not up to safety code required for a training facility. That's according to the local fire department. One father expressed relief that his son was among the survivors, but explained he doesn't know the specifics of what happened. In a text message to Reuters, he wrote, "All information is being blocked." After the incident, Beijing dismissed the local Communist Party secretary as well as the mayor from their posts. 3 suspects have been taken into custody, including the founder of the school. Grieving parents were blocked from seeing their children's remains until the next day after protests erupted. But authorities separated the parents from each other, an apparent effort to block the spread of information.
They isolated families that lost their kids. Each family is staying in a separate hotel. Some are now in the hospital, some are in the hotels. We don't know the details.
Authorities are now forcing them to sign compensation agreements. Information related to the fire has been removed from social media.
And despite that tragedy, Chinese state media seem to have their eyes on events elsewhere. A collapse of a Florida condo. Chinese media largely ignored the fire, but reported greatly on the crumbled U.S. building. Many believe this has to do with the Communist Party's efforts to boost its image ahead of its 100th anniversary. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
Caged pigeons, blocked roads, armed police, canine units, and locals on patrol. That's the scene in Beijing. The city is just a couple of days away from the Communist Party's 100th anniversary celebration on July 1st. Video spotted over 220 buses packed with soldiers driving into the celebration venue, Beijing National Stadium, more commonly known as the Bird's Nest for its appearance. Witnesses say these soldiers dress in camouflage and carry guns. The Bird's Nest is now illuminated from the inside out. Residents speculate these soldiers serve as security during the Chinese Communist Party's or CCP's birthday party. A fireworks ceremony rehearsal lit up the sky last Tuesday. According to Radio Free Asia, the test run cost Chinese taxpayers almost $11 million. But showered by the fleeting sparkles, Beijing's atmosphere is getting more tense. Troops that usually perform what's called stability maintenance or patrolling city streets for lawbreakers are now gathering near the heart of the city. Their numbers focus within a few miles of Beijing's Tiananmen Square, the center of the city. Among those troops, soldiers armed with guns, uniformed police, plainclothes police, canine dog units, and even aunties from surrounding residential communities. These older women, often called aunties in Asian culture, wear red armbands. They are tasked with monitoring the flow of residents in and out of their communities, something they believe is part of protecting Party Central. City regulations are also tightening, and it's even affecting local mail deliveries. China's Ministry of Public Security and Ministry of State Security co-signed a regulation with China Post, the country's mail service. It requires all packages headed to Beijing to be X-rayed. After the screening, each box gets a scan approval sticker. What's more, these parcels must go through a second scan before delivery. If they don't pass, they don't get delivered. Humans aren't the only ones feeling the effects of the ceremony preparation. Some animals are too. Home-raised pigeons are also subject to new restrictions. In one Beijing district, pigeon owners are banned from letting their birds fly outdoors for 2 weeks straight, from mid-June to July 1st. In 8 other districts, the pigeons can only fly after 3 p.m. Balloons are also prohibited. The only exceptions are birds and balloons to be used for the ceremony. On top of that, nearby roads are blocked ahead of the anniversary. Beijing's police bureau announced a roadblock in the vicinity of the venue for 3 days. All nearby tourist attractions are also temporarily closed. A retired professor from the CCP Central Party School, who fled China years ago, commented on the news via Twitter, saying the CCP is celebrating its 100th year, but it's making it look like an imminent catastrophe. Another post poses a question, asking, why does the CCP need so many external enemies? Adding, because if these external enemies cease to exist, the people would discover it's actually the CCP that is the enemy of the people.
Coming up, a large fire breaks out near a London train station. Footage shows a ball of flames shooting out of a black and building, smoke billowing into the sky. And Wimbledon Grand Slam tennis is back after its cancellation last year. Pandemic precautions and even poor weather couldn't put a dampener on fan spirits. Find out more in just a moment here on NTD News.
With Shepherd Lock, you can unlock your door by touching the deadbolt. Shepherd also boosts your home's security by proactively freezing in place if anyone ever tries to tamper with your lock or break down your door. We also make it easy to manage keys without hiding them under the mat. Easily create temporary keys for house guests, neighbors, or anyone else. Installation takes less than 5 minutes. Visit shepherdlock.com to buy your Shepherd Lock today, and for a limited time, enjoy 10% off.
Get ready, world, for a whole new way to invest. Introducing the Unicorn Hunters.
We are talking about a cultural and economic shift.
A savvy group of investors whose only job is to provide an unvarnished assessment of who they think can become the next unicorn.
I am in and I'm going to invest.
We all know why we're here. We're here to meet the next unicorn opportunity.
This could be a game changer for a lot of families.
Together with you, they're on the hunt for the next unicorn.
A large fire ripped through a railway arch in London on Monday. Video captured shows a ball of flames and plumes of black smoke billowing into the sky.
London Fire Brigade says 70 firefighters tackled the blaze and they brought 10 fire engines. Police say the incident beside Elephant and Castle Station in South London was not terror-related. There were no immediate reports of injuries. The cause of the fire is still unknown. Eyewitness footage of the scene shows a ball of flames shooting out of the building into the smoke. The blaze raced through 3 commercial units and trains had to be diverted. The fire brigade says road closures are in place and people are advised to avoid the areas and keep windows and doors closed.
Secret documents from the Ministry of Defense containing details of Biden's China strategy and the incident between a British warship and Russian forces have reportedly been found at a bus stop. NTD's Joy Dogood brings us the details.
Over 50 pages of classified documents from the Ministry of Defence have reportedly been found at a bus stop in southern England, with notes in them about the NATO withdrawal from Afghanistan, US President Joe Biden's China strategy, and discussion over how Russia would react to the British warship that sailed near Crimea last week, sparking an incident with Russian forces. That's according to the BBC, which says it's seen the documents. The papers are said to have been found by a member of the public in a soggy heap last Tuesday, a day before the warship incident. Russia said on Wednesday it had fired warning shots and dropped bombs in the path of the ship to chase it out of what it says are its territorial waters, but which the Western world says belongs to Ukraine. Britain rejected Russia's account of the incident. It confirmed the destroyer had sailed through what it said were Ukrainian waters, describing its path as innocent passage in accordance with international law of the sea. The BBC says the document suggested the ship's mission was conducted in the expectation that Russia might respond aggressively. The Ministry of Defence said the employee concerned reported the loss of the sensitive documents at the time, but declined to comment further, saying it would be inappropriate. Joy Dogood, NTD News.
Wimbledon Grand Slam tennis is back after a year out because of the pandemic. It comes with changes for all as the queues for tickets are gone and players stay in London hotels. But one thing is the same as ever, rain is forecast. NTD's Neil Woodrow is at the All England Club.
Here at the Wimbledon Grand Slam event in southwest London, fans are excited, looking forward to some top tennis action and cheering on their favourites, with fingers crossed for the weather. On the opening Monday of the 134th Wimbledon Championships, grey clouds hang over the All England Club. In a year of changes, one Wimbledon tradition remains intact, with rain delaying play on the outside courts. The Championships 2021 are one of the government's large-scale pilot events. Centre Court starts at 50% capacity, but will embrace 100% come the finals. But COVID-19 protocols mean this year's tournament will look and feel a little different. Proof of vaccination status must be shown, and there will be no iconic queue for daily entry. Henman Hill will be sparsely populated and fans will not be bumping into famous players strolling to the grounds from plush rentals in the village. They stay instead in central London hotels this year to minimise risks. But precautions have not helped British #1 Johanna Konta. Disappointingly for her and her fans, she was forced to withdraw on the eve of the tournament and starts a 10-day quarantine. Konta's withdrawal is a huge blow to the 30-year-old who won the Nottingham title in the build-up to Wimbledon. Despite the weather, those that have made the trip are full of expectation.
So excited. We can't believe we're here. We've been looking forward to it for so long.
I know.
And
yeah, we managed to get it as like a group of mates. So there's how many? 5, 6 of us here today. So yeah, really excited.
This gentleman plays tennis 3 times a week at his club.
You know, obviously I can't relate so much to them as I'm just a club player, but I mean it's just wonderful to see them, you know, moving around and hitting the ball as well as they do. It's just they're entertainers, you know, and that's what we come here to see, is to be entertained. So we're looking forward to it. Yeah.
In the opening game on centre court, British teenager Jack Draper had his hands full in his Grand Slam debut. He got the crowd going, though, as he took the opening set against defending champion Novak Djokovic. Draper's fearless hitting stunned Djokovic at first, but the champ soon took control and won through in 4 sets. For British fans, all eyes will be on Andy Murray once again, giving him all the support they can muster. The former world #1 has not played a singles match at the All England club since a quarter-final defeat in 2017. The investment in roofs over centre court and court #1 in recent years means the unpredictable weather is less likely to affect the schedule. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Wimbledon, London.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.